This is Danielle Harris, and you are listening to Rock Video Rental.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to Rock Video Rental. We are continuing with our Halloween series review, and this time we are going to talk about Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. This is actually our second time talking about this movie. This will be a little bit shorter than the last one, but if you guys want to go back and listen to that, I believe it was it 2019, I think, when we talked about this?
I can't remember.
That sounds about right, because I think, because 2020 we did all the Friday the 13th movies.
Oh, yep, you're right. So it would have been 2019, yeah.
Yeah. So, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is from 1982. It is directed by Tommy Lee Wallace, and the plot is kids all over America want silver shamrock mask for Halloween. Dr. Daniel Chalice seeks to uncover a plot by Silver Shamrock owner Connell Cochran. That is very vague. I purposely picked a different plot than what I read the last time. This is the one right from IMDb. So,
yeah, that's very basic for a
yeah,
description.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, the cast is Tom Atkins as Dr. Chalice, Dan O'Herlihy as Connell Cochran, and Stacey Nelkin as Ellie Grimbridge. Those are the main characters, so those are the only ones I chose to talk about. So, when we last talked about Halloween, we were talking about Halloween 2 and how it ended with Dr. Loomis and Michael burning alive in the hospital and Laurie making her escape. So, the creators of this one had an interesting task of what they were going to do. Were they going to bring Michael back from the dead, or were they going to go in a different direction altogether? They chose the latter, and it did not do very well for them.
No, it did not.
It hasn't got any respect until kind of just lately. But let's dive right into it. This movie starts off with a guy running away from some other people that are chasing him. He stumbles across a gas station, and he's telling the attendant, they're going to kill everybody, and he's not making any sense. He's kind of delirious. And he's got in his hand a silver shamrock mask. So the attendant takes him to the hospital, and this is where we meet Dr. Chalice. And he kind of works on the guy, and he can't make any sense of what the guy is saying either. While in the hospital, someone breaks in and kills the man. The person that kills him, Dr. Chalice, kind of chases out of the hospital. The guy gets in the car, dumps gas on himself, and sets himself on fire. So completely befuddled by what he saw, and just it's obvious that he puts in a lot of hours at work, and he's just burned out, and he's not your typical quote unquote good guy in a movie. He's kind of a jerk. He's a pretty terrible father. He's kind of like a womanizer and kind of a drunk, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, he's kind of like the anti-hero, if you will. So, after that happens, the man's daughter shows up at the hospital and speaks with authorities and Dr. Chalice and everything. And they tell her what happened. And, there's kind of everybody else kind of goes on with their lives. She later meets up with Dr. Chalice and is asking him questions about everything that happened. And he tells her all the stuff that's happened, and it didn't really make much sense. And he was going on and on and on about mask and how everybody was going to die. They're going to kill people. And she didn't really have any answers for it either. So they quickly decide that they're going to both together are going to go to Santa Mira, California, which is a small town known for the Silver Shamrock Factory. The two of them travel there. They notice some weird things. How basically the Silver Shamrock kind of owns the town, and everybody's kind of hush hush about what goes on there. They do a little like detective work. They find out that like her dad was in the hotel they stayed in, and what day he checked in. Then it's like, well, we got to go to this factory and check it out. So they come up with the story like they're married. And they go there, and the Cattle Cochran's kind of a strange dude, and he's being like kind of super shady and strange, and it just rubs him the wrong way.
Yeah, well, that's on top of everything else already being shady in the whole entire town.
And like this local like bum kind of tells him, that Silver Shamrock's like destroying the town, and how Cochran's is evil and all this kind of stuff. And while they're on like this tour, Ellie ends up seeing her dad's car, and when she runs for it, like she gets cut off by like all these henchmen, like these workers that work there. And a lot of these henchmen and workers, they like look the same. So another strange thing going on there. They try to they return to the motel, and they can't get a hold of anybody outside of town, and like it's like the phone was cut off because they've kind of found out what's going on. Something's going on with Silver Shamrock, and since Cochran owns the town, he kind of rigs everything up that they can't contact authorities. Ellie gets captured, and Dr. Chalice ends up getting away and tries to make a phone call. It's at this point where Dr. Chalice he goes back trying to find Ellie. He sees what happens with the magic giveaway commercial they have for Silver Shamrock, which is basically like this flashing orange pumpkin and a tune that plays numerous times through the movie of Countdown to Halloween, and it's to the tune of London Bridge. Probably one of the most notorious things from this movie, and it's like an earworm that gets stuck in your head.
Oh yeah, super annoying.
Yeah. Oh gosh. So you find out that the song and like the flashing pumpkin on the TV has a reaction with the emblem that's on the Silver Shamrock mask. And what this does basically is like any kids that are sitting in front of it, like this mask has like some kind of power where it almost like rots their head, but at the same time a bunch of bugs and snakes come out of their mouth.
Yeah, it's really
really
weird.
bizarre and grotesque. And I will say this movie has balls because they killed children. That doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
You see teenagers get it all the time, but not children.
Well, actually, they only killed one, didn't they, technically?
Yeah, but the plan was I'll get to that kind of at the end. The plan was like to send, Cochran's plan is to send Halloween back to its sacrificial origins. Because he's like super old school, apparently. And he's going to do this with that commercial and a medallion that has a piece of Stonehenge stone in it. So they like rob this one stone from Stonehenge. Somehow. The thing's like the size of a school bus and is solid rock. So I'm sure it weighs like 1,000 tons or something ridiculous. What if they shipped it UPS?
Oh my gosh, I have no idea. But yeah, there's another great movie that's focuses around the mystery of Stonehenge.
Yeah, we actually talked about it earlier, not too long ago, and the similarities of it. Uh, yeah, just this movie is like kind of off the rails at points. Like it's crazy. It's not the craziest movie I've ever seen, but it's up there.
Oh yeah.
It's like in point of plot. Um, so Dr. Chalice, he goes and rescues Ellie. They're trying to get out of there. Um, he throws a box full of like these silver shamrock medallions down while the commercial's playing, and it shoots off all these lasers that kill like everyone in sight. And now he's kind of in a race against the clock to get the TV stations not to play this commercial, because like every kid in the United States has these masks, including his own kids. Uh, and we get some weird stuff. Like he jumps in a car and tries to get out of town, and then all of a sudden, like Ellie reaches for him and grabs his throat. And I don't know how I've gotten this far in the story and not mentioned that all the guys that work for for Cochrane
Oh yeah.
are androids.
Yes, I forgot. Well, it was right before, yeah, right before he
He gets captured.
yeah, and he witnesses
The power of
the commercial
yeah. He
example.
finds out that like all these people working for Chalice are like these. Or, why do I keep saying Chalice? For Cochrane are androids.
Yeah.
If you guys are completely lost, then you're not alone, because a lot of people were very confused with this movie. Mostly because they were looking for Michael Myers, but we'll get to that when I get to the trivia and stuff. So,
He shows up
yeah, on a TV.
for a commercial.
Yeah. Um, so, after all these lasers go off, kill all the robot henchmen, he makes a getaway in the car with Ellie. Just when he thinks like they're in the clear, Ellie reveals herself to be an android duplicate. Oh gosh! So he crashes the car, and then he's like trying to get away. And she's still fighting him, and he like knocks her head off the tire iron, which is amazing. Um, and then like her severed arm comes after him, and it's like an endless fight to get this robot away from him. But he finally does, and he makes it to the gas station that we talked about earlier. And he gets on the phone, and he's calling like all these TV stations and screaming for them to turn off the commercial. The first three turn it off, and then when he calls the last channel, he's screaming, and they keep it on, and then the movie comes to an end. And yeah, good ending, because I think the first time I saw this, like, this movie is very strange and it's goofy at times, but that ending was like unnerving, just because Cochrane's whole plan was to kill children like all over the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And one station still played the commercial.
Yeah.
Like, how many kids did he kill?
Yeah, and it was I never really understood completely his. I mean, he was going back to the whole like sacrificial thing. I got that, but he was like, "It's the greatest joke because you're playing a joke on the kids."
Yeah, it's basically he's just evil.
Yeah,
Like,
and it
he's into
was
witchcraft. He's basically a warlock.
yeah, and it was very dark too. So yeah, he the concept was very dark, but as we said, only one kid technically died, or they only showed one kid dying,
Yeah, little buddy.
and he was a jerk anyways.
Yeah, he was an annoying little turd. But yeah, very strange movie, like I said. and a really like hard turn from the first two, and confused a lot of people. Um, Around this time, Friday 13th, part 3, I believe, is coming out. So at this time, it's continuing with the same story of that. Um, you got other sequels, and I think a lot of people were coming into this like, oh, we're gonna see Michael Myers again, and then it didn't happen. Word of mouth got around like, oh, this is dumb because Michael Myers isn't in it, and that caused the movie to kind of flop.
Mm-hmm.
It was still successful. I mean, it cost 2.5 million and made 14.4. But it was the poorest performing film in the Halloween series at the time. A lot of people say, if this was a standalone movie and not called Halloween 3, probably be, you know, taken better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
And
honestly, if it was just a movie, a horror movie called Season of the Witch, it'd be pretty good.
yeah, there's actually another horror movie called Season of the Witch, which is funny. This has kind of developed like a cult following. But one thing a lot of people don't talk about is that there really isn't any witches in this.
True.
There's a warlock, and technically he's a warlock.
Technically.
But he's never like full on referenced as a warlock.
That is funny.
So it's really not like a Halloween movie, and there's no witches.
So it should have been called Season of the Warlock.
Season of the Stonehenge, Stone Killing Children. I like it. So the acting in this, I mentioned today when I was watching this that I told you, I was like, there's something about Tom Atkins when he shows up in movies. I always enjoy seeing him in movies.
Mm-hmm.
I watched Lethal Weapon again not too long ago, and I honestly forgot he was in that movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he does a great job in that. He's really good at. See, in this one, in this movie he is a doctor, but he still kind of comes off as a cop.
Well, yeah, he's investigating, and he's the brave, kind of anti-hero. He's got that strong attitude.
Yeah, he does a really good job of playing kind of like an old weathered cop or like investigator that
I'm getting
has
too old for this stuff.
pretty much he's pretty much Murtaugh, but extremely knowledgeable. Maybe doesn't play by the rules so much, and he's got his flaws, but he's just like kind of like a likable guy at the same time. Another movie that makes me think of that is Night of the Creeps, where he plays a kind of weathered detective. Aside from Tom Atkins, Dan O'Herlihy was great as Connell Cochran.
Mm-hmm.
Really creepy, really like authoritative, and his character is pretty similar to the one he plays in RoboCop too.
Mm.
I don't know if you remember the scene in RoboCop where the guy gets shot and falls out the window.
I do not.
Oh my gosh, we need to watch RoboCop.
Dude, I watched RoboCop like once.
What?
Yeah.
Dude, I think RoboCop is on our schedule.
Yeah, we talked about it.
Yeah, it's definitely one you gotta watch again. But yeah, he is in that movie too. So when we do get around to watching that, you'll see this kind of similarities. But yeah, kind of menacing. Never really raises his voice, never shows any kind of anger too much. But I think it's just like his even keel, really matter of fact lack of emotion, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
The way
Well,
he
even
explains things, even when he's telling the stories about playing a prank on all the children, like it's just creepy.
yeah. And then even when he dies, he like accepts his defeat and doesn't freak out or anything.
Yeah, he just kind of stands there and smiles, and then
Yeah.
he lights up like a lightsaber. And it's
Yeah, I was
like,
gonna say we didn't even talk about how he died. Like, what was that? Like, apparently, since a piece of the Stonehenge shoots off a laser, he was standing so close to the whole stone that it just obliterated him.
I guess it's like, yeah, all of his all the atoms and stuff in his body, just the molecules just gonna explode. And it's amazing early 80s special effects for sure. You know, I kind of glazed over what happens at the beginning, or this. I just kind of went over really quick what happens in the movie. You know, since we already kind of talked about it, um, you know, a couple of years ago. If you guys really want like an in-depth one, go back and listen to that one. I think it's one of our best.
Yeah, that was a good one.
But I got some interesting thoughts this time around. So there's a scene where they go to the motel, and you know, Dr. Chalice and Ellie are trying to figure out where they're going to sleep. And she's like, "Where do you want to sleep?" And then, you know, they end up sleeping together, obviously.
Shocking.
And what I question though is, so she just met this guy, right? They don't show any scenes of them packing. He just goes to the store, he buys a 6-pack of beer and jumps in a car. And they drive to Santa Mira. And, you know, they're investigating this. And then she decides that she's going to sleep with him, but like she gets a shower. And then she gets out and just kind of like jumps on him. And then later she's got lingerie on. Does she pack that lingerie the whole time?
Oh, well, yeah, I would assume so. I don't think that dinky town had a lingerie shop.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird. Like, why would you just pack that if she was going to like? Because it was obvious that she didn't live in the area. She was going to like. She knew her dad died, and she was going to like take care of that.
hmm
So like, she packed that with her, and it's like, what was it? Was that her plan all along? Was just to do Dr. Chalice?
Well, I don't think they really thought that out. I think they were
Yeah,
just going for more to add a sexy element.
yeah. It just. Uh, I've seen this movie so many times that I just was trying to find things to dig into. And I've also read the novelization.
Well, one thing that popped in my head that I was kind of curious about, but then the more I broke it down, the more I kind of settled on an answer. But I started to think like how much of the town was maybe androids.
Hmm.
But I came to the conclusion, and I'm curious if you would come to the same conclusion as well, that really I think it was mostly, if not only, the factory people
Yeah.
and the henchmen that were androids, because I noticed it when Ellie was converted or her android was made or however you want to say that went down, that she never said anything.
Yeah.
And so anybody who said anything probably wasn't an android, from my understanding.
Yeah, because like the henchmen and stuff didn't talk.
Mm-hmm. And because at
He
first,
sneezed.
at first I was curious about kind of the guy who ran the gas station and motel, if he was maybe an android or something. But
Yeah.
then, like I said, when I broke it down, I don't think it made sense.
Yeah, and speaking of the androids, you know, that kind of makes sense because I always wondered like, so was Ellie like an android all along? But then you mentioned like how she doesn't talk after she's apparently turned into one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like how fast can Cochran make a robot look like her?
Yeah, and
Like
then
if she wasn't one all along.
the question too is, oh man, what was it? There was a movie that was like that. I can't remember which one, but is it like, to make an android look that lifelike, do you have to have a dead body?
Maybe.
So
That's what I'm wondering. Like, what happened to her body? Like,
yeah,
if it's just a lookalike, and like the thought of if she was a robot all along, how didn't Dr. Chalice realize when he was having sex with her?
yeah, that's why too, where I was just like, yeah, I think that she was turned into one. So now,
Yeah,
if that one homeless guy hadn't been there
yeah,
that he ran into, I really would have thought that maybe the whole town was androids.
right.
But because he was there and there was obviously one real human being,
Mm,
that kind of helped you find the line between androids don't talk, humans do.
yeah. And that whole scene cracks me up too because we're introduced to this homeless guy when Dr. Chalice walks by with a bottle of liquor, and the guy's like, "Hey, that bottle looks pretty heavy." He's like, "Can I have a drink?" He's like, "I don't have any diseases or anything."
Yeah, and then he shares it with them and it's just like,
Yeah,
okay.
Doctor, and he's Doctor Chalice with his hands in the bottle, like, "Yeah, okay, that's good enough for me." Um, speaking of Dr. Chalice drinking, another thing that made me laugh is he goes into that bar, after that Ellie's dad gets killed,
Hmm.
and he sits down and he's having a drink and he's watching TV and there's cartoons on TV. And like he spends an awful lot of time like watching it. Like it's obvious that they didn't have the cartoons on when they were filming it because he's just kind of like looking at the TV and nodding his head. And then he's just like, "What is this crap? Change it." Yeah, that part kind of got me this time. Um, any interesting things you want to mention?
The main thing I took away from it this time was that whole like,
Androids don't talk.
yeah, thinking about the android situation. So, I mean, I'm still it's still a giant mystery on the whole like fascination with Stonehenge and how like a piece of the rock and can be triggered from a song on TV.
Yeah,
So I'm not sure how that works. Because like, what would happen then if somebody went to Stonehenge and sang that song? Like the whole country of England would blow up.
I think it had to do with like the sequence and flashing lights of the pumpkin.
Yeah,
That's
it
what I
was
was thinking.
so they couldn't have pulled off the same stunt back in the old days
Yeah.
because there was no TV.
And then like how does it travel through someone's TV? Well, I guess they got that piece of stone in the mask. I don't know. I
Yeah, it
think we're
was
thinking too deep about this.
we are thinking way too deep, but that's the ridiculousness of this movie where it makes you think about some dumb stuff like that.
Oh man. So, in the last two I mentioned kills. Really not too much for kills in this. I mean, um Ellie's dad gets killed. Like that robot pokes his fingers into his eyes and breaks his skull,
Yeah.
which is like intense.
Hmm.
Um, little buddy gets killed. Marge Gutman, the woman next door to them in a motel, she gets like a laser blast to the mouth. And Ellie gets killed off screen and then her robot gets killed.
Um, the homeless guy gets taken away. Oh no, he gets killed.
Yep,
He got killed, and then Buddy's parents got killed.
yep. And then it's just a bunch of henchmen, robot henchmen, they get
Yeah.
killed, and Cochran. And then the unknown amount of children that died at the end. So I will just jump right into trivia because this is one of those movies that's got quite a bunch of interesting things. So I mentioned how the first two movies have Michael Myers and Dr. Loomis and Laurie in them. When they made the third one, they wanted to do something completely different. They wanted to take the series and make it an anthology where each installment is a different story. So, Halloween 1 and 2 was a Michael Myers story that ended. The next one was going to be the Killer Mask. And, I kind of feel like, as much as I like this series, I think if they kept with the anthology, it would have been more interesting.
I could agree with that. I mean, I haven't seen any more beyond 1, 2, and 3, so it's tough to say at this point. But I do feel like that when you told me that the first time you told me that, which I think was the first time that we watched this one
Mhm.
2 years ago, I thought that was a really interesting concept. I mean, essentially, like you've seen some things since then, like American Horror Story, um,
Creep Show.
yeah, and some things like that. But yeah, that concept did seem pretty, and Halloween's a perfect name for it too.
Yeah, because like anything can happen on Halloween.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like specifically that day. Like this movie took place leading up to Halloween. So yeah, it's a
Yeah.
little disappointing that didn't happen. I mean, the Michael Myers series is really strong. So I mean, I'm excited to be able to watch the rest of those. But yeah, the different story for each movie really did intrigue me. And I mean, they were off on a really strong start with Michael Myers. So it is kind of a shame that it didn't keep going that way.
Yeah, and a sudden change of story really like hurt this movie.
Mm,
Because honestly, it's not bad. It's corny, but it's not bad. It's better than a lot of horror movies from the 80s that I've seen.
yeah. Well, like I've said, and I think I said it last time when we did this, is just like I think it's a relatively solid movie
Mhm.
um, by itself. Like if you just called it Season of the Witch.
Yeah, and I agree. So the next thing I got, I mentioned there's a novelization of the movie that was published in 1982 by science fiction writer Dennis um, Etchison under the pseudonym of Jack Martin. Despite the film's critical failure, the book became a bestseller and was even reissued 2 years later after the film's release in '84.
Yeah.
And yeah, I read that book. I own it. It is actually really good. Like the writing is really good in it.
So is there something drastically different about it, or is it just how it's presented?
It's just how it's presented. There's really not much different. There's more like backstory and stuff given from Dr. Chalice and like relationship with like the people he works with and um, some of the like backstory of his ex-wife. But yeah, it's just kind of an interesting take.
Hmm.
So, um, the voice of the operator that Chalice keeps getting when he tries to call out of Santa Mira, and the announcer on the speakerphone in the town talking about the curfew
Mm-hmm.
is Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so she appears technically in the first three Halloween movies
Nice.
by voice only in this one. So when Dr. Chalice fills in the register at the motel office, he scans a list of names for the evidence of Ellie's fathers, and all the other names on the list are names of the crew of the movie.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
It would have been funny if they put Michael Myers on there.
right. Dr. Loomis.
Oh,
Uh,
actually, speaking of which, hopefully I'm not going to steal one from you, but I noticed the music.
yeah.
That they had some really similar stuff to the first Halloween movies.
Hmm.
So I mean, obviously the first time I watched it, I hadn't seen any of the other Halloween movies, so I had no idea, but I picked up on that this time.
Yeah, the music's pretty awesome in this movie, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's creepy, but like not typical, I guess. It's very like synth heavy, but kind of like unnerving at the same time. It reminds me a little bit of like The Running Man.
Yeah, I could see that.
But so the next one I got here is the using the original molds, the skull, witch, and jack-o'-lantern mask seen in the film. They're actually mass produced by Don Post Studios and sold in retail stores to promote the film's release. which they still make those. You can still get those.
Oh, nice.
It took over 40 takes to get the shot when Tom Atkins throws a skull mask on a security camera. The director, Tommy Lee Wallace, revealed during the cast 2015 reunion that scene took longer than he expected because during the shoot, he playfully tossed the mask and caught it on the very first try. So they had to recreate that. And of course, it took forever.
Of course. It's always the simplest things that do that, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So the small town of Santa Mira was also the setting for the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1956.
Old school.
Yeah. So the gas station scene in the film can also be seen in John Carpenter's The Fog from 1980. And then our favorite name from the last movie, Dick Warlock, who played Michael Myers in Part 2, is credited under an assassin in the credits of this one. So Tom Atkins and Garn Stevens, who played Marge Gutman, they were actually husband and wife at the time of this movie. Yeah. So the factory for Silver Shamrock was actually a repurposed milk factory. Which doesn't really surprise me. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And it kind of looks like a barn.
Yeah, I did kind of think that as well.
And the last thing I got is Tom Atkins got pneumonia while he was acting in this film.
How?
Yeah. So impressive that he was able to finish that.
Huh.
So that is all I got. You want to jump into the grades?
Let's jump into it.
All right. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
I can go first.
Oh, I guess we got to do our... Well, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Got IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, yeah. And we talked about it 2 years ago, but...
Yeah, it might have changed. Sometimes they change. IMDb, what do you think that one is?
5.1.
Dude, you're so close. It's a 5.0.
Oh, dang. Nice.
And then Rotten Tomatoes, there is critic and audience.
Critic, let's go with 59.
41.
Ooh. And audience, let's go 60.
27.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I was surprised the audience was so low. Still, a lot of people hate this movie because it doesn't have Michael Myers in it. And, in hindsight now, it looks even more like a standout because they went back to Michael. So now it's Halloween 3 is still that weird outlier where it's why does this exist? But most people don't think about what their plan was at the time.
Yeah.
So if you go back and think about, this is 1982, Michael and Dr. Loomis are both dead.
They're dead.
So,
they're all dead.
You don't know what death is. But yeah, I'm going to be honest. I didn't like this movie the first time I saw it.
Oh, well,
I was very confused by it too.
Yeah, I can imagine. But see, for me, this was probably the best way to take it because when I first watched it, it was my first Halloween movie. So
yeah, you saw this, and then you saw 1, and then 1 and 2, and now 3. So yeah, you definitely got a different angle at it, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that leads perfectly into grades. Because yeah, I mean, I don't think it's stellar or anything like that, but as far as if you take the movie for what it is by itself, I think it's relatively solid. It's quirky story, it's cheesy special effects sometimes. The acting's not Oscar nominated or anything, but as far as something fitting into the horror movie genre, I mean, it could stand out. And as you said, they took it a bit dark because the whole plot of the movie was to kill a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate the originality, and I mean, both times I watched it, I enjoyed it. I cannot remember what I originally gave it. I'm trying to think on where I kind of want to put this. I think I'm going to go. I'm stuck between two numbers right now. Let's go with I think I'm going to go with 3.5.
Yeah, that's fair.
I was between that and 3. But I don't know. At the same time, I'm kind of thinking and comparing it to the other Halloween movies, so I'm trying to judge it by itself right now.
Yeah, I get that. I would say this movie is awesomely bad because, I mean, it's a competent movie, but just like the storyline and stuff is just so out there. Some of the special effects he said are, they're cheesy. They're very early 80s. Some of the acting can be a little hammy at times, which just kind of adds to the charm of the movie. And it's not like like you said, not a stellar, like amazing movie. And you're not getting like Tom Hanks and Gene Hackman level of acting in this. But like I said, Tom Atkins is kind of he's like a cool character, I guess, and he's a good character actor. Everything he's in, he usually does a pretty good job. I mean, he wouldn't have been in so many movies if he wasn't at least decent. Yeah, I don't. It's a movie that I watch like every single October, just because it kind of has that Halloween feel to it. Just of the holiday, not even just the series. And like I said, the novelization of it was great. It really surprised me, like how good the quality of writing is in it.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting, because I've read some other novelizations. I read the novelization of License to Drive,
Yeah, I
and
remember
that
you
was a
saying that.
quick, easy read that like would have been for like teenagers or something. But um, I was just blown away by the quality of writing in Halloween 3, and a book that sells for way too much money. I believe it easily goes for like 60, $70, and it's a paperback. I paid a lot less for that, but I got lucky and found mine cheap on eBay. But I mean, if you guys can get your hands on it or find like a PDF online or something of it, definitely give it a read. Um, I think my grade for this is going to be a little bit higher than yours. I went with a 4 out of 5, just because it is a movie that I enjoy. It's a movie I grew to like, because like I said, the first time I saw it, I didn't really care for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just said it was kind of stupid. But I don't know what changed my mind. I think it's one of those things where I went back and I was like, I need to watch this again because I haven't watched it in forever, and see if my mind has changed. Sometimes it happens for the good and sometimes it happens for the bad. This one I ended up growing on me, so I'm happy I went back and watched it again. Yeah, I mean, I watch it. I like it so much that we've reviewed it twice now.
Yeah, I was all right with it. I mean, like it worked well. It's
Yeah.
not one when we said, "Oh, we're doing it," and I was like, "Crap."
Yeah. So obviously, the next one we're going to be talking about is Halloween 4: The Return of Michael Myers, which I believe was the second Halloween movie I ever saw. I bought it on VHS back in the day, so it'll be fun going back and watching that. I've seen it a couple other times since, but it's an interesting installment in how they try to explain away Michael being dead, presumably dead. But we'll get to that next time. And as always, be kind, rewind.